If you're thinking about moving to Smith Lake, it's easy to get caught up in the views, the calm water, the gorgeous sunsets, and just the dream of living on the lake. But before you pack up and head south or north, you need to know what it's really like to live here. Because while Smith Lake offers some incredible benefits, it's not for everyone. There are real pros and cons that can make or break this experience, depending on your expectations. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through the honest truth about living on Smith Lake before you make the move. Now, I'm not just someone who sells property here. I grew up on this lake. Smith Lake raised me. My family still lives on the water, and I work with buyers and sellers on this lake every single day. I've spent years helping people figure out if Smith Lake is truly the right fit for them. And that insight alone comes from just living it day in and day out. So when I talk about the lifestyle, the trade-offs, and what it really takes to enjoy living here, it's not theory, it's personal. This video is real talk from someone who knows this lake inside and out. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat things. This isn't a highlight reel, and it's not just a list of pretty houses. It's about helping you figure out if the Smith Lake lifestyle fits your real world needs, your family, your schedule, and your goals. If you're in the early stages of deciding where to buy, or you've already toured a few lake homes but haven't pulled the trigger, this video is built to give you clarity, because not every lake is the same and not every buyer needs the same experience. So let's get into the pros. Pro number one is easy daily access to the lake. When people dream about living on Smith Lake, they're really picturing this: waking up, grabbing a cup of coffee, and stepping straight out onto their dock. And that dream, it's real for homeowners who live directly on the water. Having daily, easy access to the lake is a game changer. You don't have to trailer your boat, drive to a public ramp, or plan your day around logistics. You just walk outside and start enjoying, and that changes everything. Families get more use out of the lake when it's right there, because spontaneous moments can become possible. A quick swim after work, or a 30-minute sunset cruise, or tubing with the kids before dinner doesn't require a whole production. You don't have to wait for a weekend or a holiday. That's one of the biggest differences between owning a waterfront home and simply visiting the lake. When you live here full-time or even part-time, easy access means that you actually use the lake. It becomes part of your routine, not just a special occasion. And it's not just about boating, paddleboarding, kayaking, fishing off the dock, jumping in after a long day. These are things that you do because it's just right there, and the convenience can't be overstated. For professionals who work from home or retirees who want peace without boredom, this is the kind of access that supports a healthy lifestyle. Even a short break outside can make a big difference. I've worked with plenty of buyers who thought they'd be happy with a lake view or a home near the lake, and some are. But many come back later wanting true waterfront access because they realize how much more they'd use the lake if it were just a few steps away. So if you're weighing different property types around Smith Lake, think seriously about how often you want to use the water and how much effort you're really willing to put in each time. Because when the lake is easy to reach, it becomes part of your life, not just your vacation. Pro number two, enjoying Smith Lake year-round. That's one of the biggest surprises for people who move to Smith Lake. Just how incredible the lake is outside of summer. Sure, summer weekends are gorgeous. Blue skies, warm water, tons of activity. But if you actually live here, you start to realize that spring and fall might be the best kept secrets. Early spring mornings when the mist is over the water, or crisp fall afternoons when the leaves are changing, those shoulder seasons bring a peaceful beauty that visitors just rarely get to experience. The water is still accessible, and the air is comfortable, and the pace is just much slower. And winter, while you might not be swimming, that doesn't mean that the lake shuts down. Locals still get out on the boat, especially during a warm spell. Some even fish year-round, and even when the dock is quiet, the views don't disappear. That year-round access to serenity is just something that most vacationers never see. Another perk weekdays. When you live here full time, the lake isn't just a weekend thing. Monday through Thursday, it's quiet, peaceful. You'll feel like you have the whole place to yourself, and that's when locals really enjoy it the most, without all the boat traffic and without all the crowds. If you've only visited Smith Lake during a holiday or a peak weekend, your impression might be a little bit skewed, but living here paints a very different picture. The rhythm of the lake life unfolds across all 4 seasons, and it brings something new with each change. And that rhythm, it's not just scenic, it's grounding. People who move here often talk about how their lifestyle just naturally slows down. They reconnect with nature, spend more time outside and off their phone, and even find themselves being more present just from living near the water year-round. Pro number 3 is the community and the neighborhoods. One thing that surprises a lot of new buyers on Smith Lake is just how connected the community is, even though homes are spread out. It's not like living in a subdivision where neighbors wave as they drive by. On the lake, relationships are built dock to dock. Whether it's sharing tools, helping with dock repairs, or just chatting across the water, there's a genuine sense of connection that grows naturally when you live near the same shoreline. And it's not just full-time residents. Many second homeowners build real friendships too, because lake life slows you down. People take the time to get to know each other, especially when they're in the same cove or part of the lake. There are also private Facebook groups and community chats where neighbors share everything from lost paddles to wildlife sightings. It's low key, but it makes a big difference. People look out for each other here, and that kind of support, especially if you're new to the area, is invaluable. If your primary home is in a city where you don't know your neighbors, lake life can feel like a refreshing change. People wave, they say hello, they bring an extra tomato from their garden. That kind of neighborly spirit still exists here. It's especially helpful for second homeowners. Whether you need someone to check on your place after a storm, help adjust your dock cables, or recommend a contractor, having neighbors that you trust is a game changer. And over time, it turns a vacation house into a second home with people who genuinely care. Okay, now let's talk about a few cons. Water level fluctuation and dock maintenance. One of the biggest learning curves for new Smith Lake homeowners is understanding the seasonal water level changes and what that means for your dock. Smith Lake is managed by Alabama Power, and like many man-made lakes in the southeast, the water level isn't constant. In the summer, we're usually at what we call full pool, which means docks are floating high, boat lifts are usable, and everything looks like the brochure. But in the fall and winter, the water is intentionally lowered. That's normal. It helps manage flood control and downstream flow. But if you're not prepared, it can be a bit of a surprise. Docks may sit on dry ground in some areas, boat lifts may not be usable, and shallow coves can temporarily lose some access. The good news is, most locals adapt very easily. If your dock is floating and properly cabled, it'll move with the water. But you do have to adjust those cables, especially as levels change in the fall. That's something every homeowner needs to either do themselves or hire out. And if you're a second homeowner, you'll need a seasonal plan. That might mean scheduling dock adjustments in advance or working with a neighbor or service provider to keep things safe and functional when you're not there. Another thing to think about is your property's dock location matters. Some coves stay deeper than others in winter, and some areas lose access entirely. It doesn't make the property bad, it just means that you need to set your expectations and choose a spot that fits how you'll use the lake. I've seen buyers fall in love with a summer perfect home, only to be disappointed when the dock sits dry half the year. But I've also seen buyers who knew what to expect and had zero regrets because they planned ahead. For some buyers, seasonal water levels are a deal breaker, and that's okay. The key is knowing how you want to use the lake and choosing a property that fits. It's not about avoiding the issue, it's about buying with the right expectations. Con number 2 is seasonal boat traffic. If you've only visited Smith Lake on a quiet weekday, the summer weekend traffic might catch you off guard. During peak season, especially holidays, the lake can get very busy. Really busy. You'll see everything from pontoons to wake boats, jet skis to cruisers, and while that energy can be so fun, it also means more wakes, more noise, and more navigation challenges if you're out on the water. For full-time residents, it's part of the rhythm. Most locals adjust their habits. Early morning boat rises, sunset cruises, or enjoying weekdays instead of high traffic weekends. Once you live here, you start to know the patterns and you learn to plan around them. But if you're hoping for total peace and solitude every day of the week, you'll want to factor this in. Some areas of the lake see more activity than others. Bigger, more open channels naturally get more traffic, while coves and quieter sections tend to stay calmer even during summer weekends. This is where working with someone who knows the lake makes a big difference, because choosing the right area can dramatically change your entire experience. It's not a reason to avoid the lake, but it is something to understand if your idea of lake life involves total tranquility. The good news, that kind of peace does exist here, especially during the week, in the off season, or in thoughtfully chosen spots. Con number 3. Rural location and convenience. Now, Smith Lake is beautiful, but it's rural. And for some people, that's a feature. For others, it's a challenge. Depending on where you live around the lake, you might be 20 or 30 minutes from the nearest grocery store, hardware store, or pharmacy. Amazon doesn't always deliver next day, and cell service can be spotty in some coves. And if you're used to having 5 coffee shops within a mile, it's an adjustment. That rural feel is part of the charm though. It's quiet, it's peaceful, and it's space to breathe. But it also means thinking ahead. You'll start keeping a running list for your town trips. You'll plan errands more intentionally, and it's not a huge deal, but it's different than suburban life for sure. This trade-off impacts people differently. For retirees or remote workers, the slower pace of open space are often exactly what they're looking for. But if you commute to Birmingham or Huntsville or have kids in multiple activities, the drive time adds up quickly. And choosing the right location around the lake becomes very crucial. Some areas have quicker access to interstates, better schools nearby, or stronger internet infrastructure. Others offer more seclusion but less convenience. That's why knowing your priorities and talking through your day-to-day lifestyle matters when you're picking a property. So yes, living on Smith Lake means giving up some big city conveniences, but for many, that's the very reason that they love it. Con number 4 is compromise is just part of lake living. Here's the truth that most listing agents won't tell you. There's no such thing as the perfect lake house. On Smith Lake, every property involves some kind of trade-off, and knowing that up front can save you a lot of frustration, especially if you're relocating or buying from out of state. You might find the perfect view, but it's down 75 steps to the dock. Or maybe you've got a flat walk to the water, but the cove is a little shallow in winter. Some homes offer deep water year-round, but they're exposed to heavy boat wakes. Others have peaceful and protected areas, but farther from groceries and restaurants. You'll often have to choose between things like big water views versus quiet coves, deep water versus gentle slopes, main channel activity versus tucked away privacy. Even sun exposure, morning light versus afternoon shade, becomes a factor for some buyers. There's always a balance between view, access, depth, privacy, price, and location. And unless your budget is unlimited, you'll have to decide which features truly matter to you and which ones you're willing to compromise on. The key is being realistic, not idealistic. This is where buyer's regret can creep in. People get swept up in emotion, fall in love with a home, and only later realize it does not match how they actually want to use the lake. But the reverse is also true. When you go in with clear priorities, you end up with a home that fits you, even if it's not perfect on paper. The good news, once you've lived with the trade-offs, they often fade. That walk down to the water just becomes part of your workout routine. That tucked away cove becomes your sanctuary. What seemed like a downside becomes part of the charm. if it fits your lifestyle. The goal isn't perfection, it's alignment. The right home is the one that supports the lake life that you want and helps you enjoy it for years to come. Smith Lake is a special place, and for the right buyer, it can absolutely be a dream come true. But like any dream, it's important to see the full picture. The beauty, the community, the lifestyle, they're all very real, but so are the trade-offs. This isn't a place for everyone. If you need a 5-minute access to a Target, year-round deep water in a shallow cove, and 0 weekend boat noise, you may end up very frustrated. But if you value nature, connection, slower mornings, and water just outside your door, there's nothing like it. The truth is, the pros and cons aren't in competition. They're just the reality of lake living. And if you go into the process with your eyes open, you're far more likely to love what you find. I've seen it over and over when buyers understand what matters most to them. They make great decisions, even if the property isn't perfect. They compromise on the right things and invest in a lifestyle that brings them joy, not surprise. So if you're thinking of moving to Smith Lake, whether it's full-time, part-time, or just starting to dream, the most important thing you can do is get informed. Not just by listings, but by the lived experience of people who actually know this lake. If you're considering to move to Smith Lake, whether it's your forever home or a weekend escape, and you want help figuring out which areas or property type fit your lifestyle, I'd love to chat. My contact information is below, and there's no pressure. I'm here to help you make a smart, confident decision, one that feels right, not just on paper, but in real life.